Now it's time. We would like to begin. This is the last session for today. It is session 2-3, Forum on the Future of the Affected Areas. I am Naito from National Institute of Advanced Industrial Sciences and Technology. I'll be chairing the session together with Mr. Toshimitsu Honma from the NRA. Please let me give a brief overview of this session. It is next year will be the 35th year since the Chernobyl accident, and in Chernobyl there is a exclusion zone in the 30-kilometer radius from the nuclear power plant with severe restrictions even today. Even though direct comparison is difficult due to the size of the accident and the social circumstances, in Fukushima we have had evacuation orders, after which there was a decontamination effort and some of the evacuation order was lifted, and there had been various issues, various undertakings for recovery, and these we have now highlighted some of the issues and challenges, and we would like in the presentation describe some of the past efforts and the challenges that remain. First of all, I'd like to give you a brief overview. We have two presentations from invited guests, and then we have a panel discussion. If we have time, we would like to accept questions from the audience. The questions be answered by the presenters. If we do not have any time, the answers will be provided on the website. Now we would like to move on to the presentations. Mr. Honma will be chairing the presentations. Mr. Honma, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Naito. I'm working for the NRA. My name is Honma. I'm one of the co-chairs for this session. I have been working at the Japan Atomic Energy Agency from 1992 to 1999. And during this time, we have done joint research with Chernobyl Center for International Research on Science and Technology. And through this work, we have been reviewing the accident assessment model. And in this session, we have two presentations from invited guests. Now, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Terry Schneider.
So I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Terry Schneider. He's the director of the CEPN, National Nuclear Protection Evaluation Center in France. He is the director of this CEPN, and also he's the member of the ICRP Committee 4, and also is the now chair of the CLPPH, Committee on Radiological Protection and Public Health of NEA. So, Terry, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for this introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I will start to share my screen. I hope it works. Yeah, it's okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So my presentation today is focused on the support of societal and economic dynamics of the recovery process. And this is based on lessons from Chernobyl and Fukushima. And I prepared this presentation with my colleague, Jacques Lochard. So the first, in introduction, I just would like to mention that Chernobyl and Fukushima experience has demonstrated that rehabilitation of living and working conditions in affected areas, this is really a complex process. This process embarks all dimensions of individual, but also on community life, and we have seen that this morning. All these aspects are involved and essentially interconnected. Based on that, for the recovery process, there is a double challenge, which is not so easy to address. First of all, of course, with regard to radiation protection, the key point is to protect people and the environment. But with the long term, there is a need to maintain and to support the dynamic of socio-economic activities. And the key challenge is then to work together on these two main aspects. This relies on the direct involvement of affected people and local community. And we already discussed this aspect of co-expertise process this morning, which is quite important to address this challenge. But it also requires the adoption of governance mechanism. This governance mechanism to support economic and social activities need to respect some ethical and social values, and I will emphasize some key elements on this aspect. What are the lessons from experience, both from Chernobyl and Fukushima? In fact, after a nuclear accident, people are lost. They are no longer trusted the authorities and experts. They gradually lose the control of their daily life. And then all these aspects are putting a threat on their dignity. This is something that we observe both after Chernobyl and Fukushima in the long-term process. Then, of course, when we had this discussion just in the session before, there is a will to return to the ante situation. But in fact, returning to what we can call the normal life or the life as before is not possible. First of all, the full removing of radioactivity is not achievable. We had the testimony from Mr. Kano from Yamakiya mentioning that the mountains are still contaminated. Many human and societal consequences are irreversible. There are departure of some people, there are the loss of infrastructure and so on, disruption of different aspects. There is also the disruption of community, which induce ruptures and complex dilemma for the people in the daily life. Then the socio-economic dynamic is confronted to an altered context. This is no more the same as before, and with new constraints. The demography is quite important, the image of the area and the evolution of the environment. What we have learned as well is that radiation protection, although essential to protect people, for those who stay and those who settle, the radiation protection is not able to provide the answer to ensure the socio-economic development. Of course, the respect of standards is important, but it's not enough to rebuild confidence. And people discuss what is the meaning of the standard, of the radiological standard. Then there is a need to rebuild social trust, and this requires involving people and rely on direct relationship between stakeholders. One of the key challenges of the recovery process is really to respect individual choices. And this is quite important, especially for the long-term recovery process. In this context, radiological protection must be put at the service of improving the living condition in the affected areas, which means promoting individual well-being. We had this presentation before this morning, but also the quality of living together. The importance of the community have been emphasized in the previous session. Socioeconomic development must take into account the radiological context, of course. We cannot avoid that. So we need to contribute to the protection of people and the environment, and also to maintain the vigilance. This is quite important for the long term. None of the stakeholders and none of the decision-making levels, whatever local, regional, or national, all the solution alone. There is a need to work together. The contribution in this context of local community is specific, and we have seen that each community may have a different future, and it's unavoidable as a driving force for long-term rehabilitation. In this context, based on these lessons, what emerged in the late 90s in the context of some projects which have been developed in Belarus, the Ethos project and then the core project, aiming at rehabilitating the living condition, this emerged the co-expertise process. We already mentioned that. What we mean by co-expertise, I just put at the bottom of this slide, that co-expertise process is the abbreviation for cooperation between experts and stakeholders. This co-expertise process is based on the direct involvement of affected people in order to characterize their personal radiological situation and that of the community, and then to implement actions to protect themselves and to improve the quality of life with the support of experts and authorities. This is quite important. After Fukushima, there was refinement of this process. I can mention several communities who have been embarked in this type of process in Kawauchi village, in Suetsegi village, in Yamakiya, among others, where in fact there was some new experience with regard to embarking the people, embarking the element for the measurement. What is the basic component of this co-expertise process? You can see on this diagram the logic of this co-expertise process. I will come back on the main component. Basically, there are three pillars of the co-expertise process. First, the dialogue, then the measurement, and the local project. And the key point is to articulate all these elements, combining a two-way communication, relying on trust building, and of course, with citizen participation and empowerment, and of course, scientific and technical expertise at the service of this process. First of all, what is the role of the dialogue? This dialogue allows affected people to ask questions, to share their concern, their challenge and expectation. And gradually, it's allow the people to become familiar with the basic notion of radiological protection. The aim is not to become expert, but it's really to have a grip on the local situation. It's also allow the expert to take ownership of the local situation. The expert doesn't know what is a local situation. The basic knowledge is coming from the local stakeholders. Also, the dialogue allows a plurality of point of view to be expressed. It is a means to question ready-made representation, false ideas, incantatorial speeches, and unrealistic point of view. With the dialogue, all these elements are challenged, and then progressively we can have a shared understanding of the situation to identify the values shared by the local community. A key element for the expert in this dialogue is to be able to listen and to have empathy with regard to the local stakeholders. Then the role of measurements. In this context, it's a way of making the invisible and the frightening visible, and of giving everyone the key to understand where, when, and how she or is exposed, and thus apprehending the radiological situation, the reality. It's not a theoretical aspect, it's really to make the reality visible for each local community. Whether it is those who have decided to stay, those who wish to return, or even those who want to come and settle in the affected area, all must understand the reality they are or will be faced with in order to make informed decisions and to build the future. Experience has shown that sharing results of measurement in order to discuss and compare individual situations, this is a powerful means to identify the possible action to improve the protection of involved people. And this protective action, this has to be discussed both by individuals themselves, but also with the support of local authority and national authority. Then the third pillar for the co-expertise process is the role of local project. In fact, beyond the practical objective of protecting individual and the community or improving the living and working condition, these local projects are a means for those involved to find again a meaning of personal fulfillment stopped after the accident. And then the key point, and especially for the recovery, and this is the topic of this session, to look again positively at the future. In order to effectively implement this local project, the cooperation with the competent authority, public and private organization, expert and professional, all this cooperation is essential. Then there is a need to have the support of local projects, which require to establish appropriate mechanism in order to ensure legitimacy, transparency of the process, fairness of the decision-making process. This is quite essential, and we need to really assess how far the mechanism put in place respect all these elements. Then, as I mentioned at the beginning, the key point is to articulate the protection of people and the environment and the socio-economic dynamics. In this context, the governance of socio-economic activity is quite important, and the rehabilitation of decent and sustainable living conditions must be based on the long-term vision of the territory. This long-term vision needs to be co-negotiated between all the actors concerned, which mean national, regional, and local authority, experts, scientists, professionals, and of course, first of all, the people directly affected by the accident. Then the challenge is to articulate this sustainable framework. This is not a theoretical framework, but then there is a need to consider how to restart social and economic activity put in the aftermath of the accident, how to support the emergence of new and innovative activity in line with each local context, and to support to establish support for local projects led by individuals or by local communities. In fact, all these local projects need to take into account and to have the aim to improve constantly the radiological situation, and not to forget about that. Then, with regard to this governance of socio-economic activity, the technical and administrative management is essential and must be done while respecting the ethical values structuring the radiological protection. In fact, ICRP has published 2 years ago a report on the ethical values with regard to the foundation of the radiological protection, and these values are quite important to keep in mind and to assess with regard to the socio-economic development. First of all, we have beneficence and non-maleficence. What does it mean? It's mainly to promote the well-being of individuals and the quality of living together. And of course, then there is a need to discuss what is the meaning of the well-being of individuals and local community, and how to have a shared vision on that. The second aspect is prudence. We need to promote health surveillance because of scientific uncertainties and public concern about the possible effect of radiation in the long term. We also need to consider justice, which means to support all those affected by the accident and to discuss that for all community, on all local community, including the people who have evacuees and who are not ready to return, or who don't want to return to the affected territories. All the people need to be considered with regard to that. And finally, there is a question of dignity. There is a need to empower the people concerned so that they regain their autonomy. The economic development, like implemented protective action, must involve stakeholders, which mean inclusiveness. They need to be done honestly and with openness, which refer to transparency, and in explaining, justifying, and taking responsibility for the proposed action, which mean to be accountable with regard to the future. This governance need also to adopt a new approach to expertise, which is not classical for radiation protection expert, in which scientists, expert, professionals are at the service of local actors in order to facilitate the development of their capacity to assess and manage their own situation. And then this is not the solely role of the expert to do that, but really to be at the service of these people. Then there is a key role of the monitoring and the evaluation of local projects. This has to be done with all stakeholders in co-assessment of the situation and problems, and to adapt the strategy and policy as the recovery process evolves. And then there is a key point to be considered, which is capitalizing on the accumulated experience and making it accessible and to share to all affected areas, but also to share internationally with regard to the preparedness for future accidents. Finally, this governance of socioeconomic activities need to have shown that past experience with community having participated to co-expertise experience, these are keen to develop local projects. These local projects are developed in different domains, radiological protection, but also social activity, economic development, as well as education, memory, and culture. And there will be a session tomorrow on this topic. With regard to this last point on education, memory, and culture, this is quite important to consider for the future of the recovery process. Memory is not only for the commemoration, but also serves as a living reminder to raise awareness, to maintain vigilance, to pass on experience, and so build the future. And the involvement of education system is a crucial way for the transmission of experience to the next generation, and it's a crucial way also to ensure that people are able to make a future vision of the situation. In conclusion, I just would like to emphasize some few points. As I already said, the management of the recovery process must be linked with the long-term vision of the territory, taking into consideration the health, social, environmental, economic, cultural, memorial dimension, among others. The objective is, first of all, to restore individual well-being and the quality of community life in the affected areas where people are allowed to reside. This implies to develop a sustainable socio-economic framework in order to ensure the future for the affected area. This framework needs to articulate the redeployment of infrastructure and socio-economic activities, including innovative projects. It needs also to embark the support of local projects initiated by individual and local community, and it needs to ensure the dissemination and transmission of the gained experience in managing the situation. In fact, the few experiences of community affected by the Chernobyl and Fukushima accident have shown that to be successful, the recovery process must rely on governance mechanism, securing an open dialogue between all stakeholders, making the expert at the service of the affected people, empowering individual and local community in order to decide together the values and the principle for a common future. It needs to rely on the support of authority, and finally, but not least, to respect individual autonomy. So this is my last slide. I thank you for your attention.
Terry, thank you very much for your excellent and informative presentation based on your long involvement of both Chernobyl and Fukushima projects. それでは、2番目のご講演に移りたいと思います。2番目のご講演は、福島総総復興推進機構の新井康人先生です。新井さんは通商産業省、今の経済産業省に入省された後、貿易振興課長や企業行動課長を経て、福島後内閣府原子力被災者生活支援チーム総括参事官として、避難指示解除や福島北港に携われた後、大臣官房審議官 を経て、現在、福島総合復興推進機構の専務理事であられます。それでは、李先生、ご講演よろしくお願いいたします。
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is Yasuhiro Ni from the Organization for Fukushima Soso Region Revitalization. In this session, I would like to share with you the 5 years experience of revitalizing the industry and economy, and based upon the private and public sector cooperation. By sharing our experience, I would like to contribute to this session. And let me share our PowerPoints. So the title, How to Restart Affected Businesses. And moving on to the next slide. First of all, that I would like to introduce to you the public-private joint team and the structure of the organization explained here. The public-private Fukushima Soso Region Revitalization Joint Team was established in 2015 August. Jointly created by national government, private companies, and the local governments, including the Fukushima prefectural government. So indeed, this is a joint team contributed by the public and private sectors, and it currently employs about 280 members. The background of the establishment include it was established by a cabinet decision in June 2015 as an entirely new institution. And we understand that there were 8,000 businesses, and we decided to visit them individually and listen to their concern and worries. And that was the original purpose of establishing this team. It was established in 2015, which was that for 4 years after the nuclear accident, and so that there was a gradual lifting of the evacuation orders. As you already know, that if that evacuation order is lifted, those people who would like to return can return. But it is not the fact, because there are many people who wanted to return but couldn't return because of the lack of employment. So then we decided to create the employment and livelihood for those people, to accommodate for those people who would like to return. Right now, the green area represent the so-called 12 affected areas and local communities, and we have the 6 branches. Aside from the green area, we have the office in Iwaki and Tokyo. And to assist those businesses who once was evacuated but return to restart their business. So these are the gradual lifting of the evacuation order, and also that the level of the radiation coming down, and also that the full masks have increased. That protective gears is not required in 96% of the Fukushima nuclear plant already. So these are the features or support offered by the joint team. There are 3. We are not passive, as you can read here, that we individually visited. That is, that it was a door-to-door visit and consulted with all businesses in the 12 municipalities affected by the disaster. And number 2, we did not merely inform the businesses of support measures. These are the available support measures. Rather, we stepped forward and we closely supported the business owners by thoroughly listening to their concerns and building the trust. If there are 8,000 businesses, there are 8,000 types of the concerns and worries that we are convinced of this. Number 3, in response to what we heard, we worked with the Japanese government to set up the various measures to help businesses become self-reliant. So independent initiative by the businesses is a key. And this is almost like the constitution of our joint team, that when we started 5 years ago, that we established the 5 principles. Number 1, that put ourselves in the sufferer's shoe. Number 2 is a dedicated support and no cutting of the corners, spare no effort. Number 3, focus on being a listener. And number 4, the value teamwork. And number 5, have a genuine and strong will in achieving the region revitalization. At the bottom, in 2 lines, you can see Fukushima cannot recover unless also recovers. Japan cannot revitalize unless the Fukushima recovers. And this is still remains to be our conviction. Now, I would like to explain to you that the 5 years of activities in 3 phases, 1, 2, 3. Number 1 first phase. And this is support for the businesses. At first, when we started that interviews, and these are the words that are thrown to us, 4.5 years since the accident, why are you here now? Then what will you do for me? Some of that comments are very harsh, but that our employees are repeatedly visited and listened carefully to their concerns and provided the dedicated support in order to build the trust. So, as a result, after 5 years, that we are called very endearingly called Kamin-san, Mr. Public and Private Sector. So these are the specific flow of the support, starting from the visiting, as the slide shows that we visit them and build the trust, as Schneider-san said a number of the times in his presentation of the trust, and the trust also is a starting point for us. And based upon the based on the trust, that we investigate the issues and needs and try to identify whether they would like to return or not to return, that we support this decision making. And as I have mentioned, identify that the issues that we have to have, what are the issues? And based upon this, on the right-hand side, practical assistance provided on the professional level. So this is overall flow. Next, that for the 5 years that we have been asking that the budget to the national government for helping the self-reliance, and in total in 5 years, 39 billion of 300 million euro was earmarked by the national government. And out of this, there are 2 things that I would like to highlight here. In Seoul district, there is a keen shortage of the human resources, and so that we assisted of employing the human resources, and also that securing and developing that sales channel. So number 1, the talent recruitment support. And we dispatched several dozens of the coordinator for recruitment, so that the businesses can choose that the employment media, and also that we propose the contents of the advertisement, and after the recruitment, how to retain that employees, and that is another area of the support, so that the businesses on their own can employ and retain the employees, so that we are helping them to improve the hiring capabilities. Number 2, the market development support. And first of that, we have the meeting on the left side. We have the meeting with the businesses, and in the middle that you can say these are the improvement we advise to enhance the value added of the products. So these are the products that we developed together with them. And on the right hand side, this is a market development support and introducing them to the buyers. And so that this is a statistical results in the past 5 years. At the very bottom, you can see that around 31% of the affected businesses restarted in hometown, and they are operating outside, that in the evacuated area 23%, and put together that 54%. majority of them have already started. And we visited approximately 5,400 individuals and provided the consulting services to 1,400. And earlier we mentioned that hiring that capable people. As a result of this, acquiring the talent assisted approximately 890 employees and leading to the employment of 1,900 jobs, and uncovered the sales channels of 200 businesses and successfully uncovered that 1,100 deals. We led into the deals. However, there are challenges on the other hand. For the past 10 years, and there is the bright side and dark side in the process of recovery. Please look at this, that in Tamura or Kawauchi, these are the areas that the lifting of the order was early. And you can see at the bottom the rate of the returnees. Tamura and Kawauchi, thanks to the early lifting of the evacuation order, especially Tamura, that 80% and 90% of the businesses and people returned already. But the later that the lifting, the lower that the rate of returning, as you can very clearly see, about 30% or less. And also Okuma and Futaba, Namie, Tomioka, these are the location of the nuclear plants that they are facing the even more uphill battle. Another issue is industrial revitalization. The left top, this is a manufactured goods shipment from Fukushima. As a Fukushima prefecture as a whole, that it recovered to 5 trillion yen scale, but below this, the green area, 12 municipalities, it has recovered to 80%. But out of this, that construction business accounts for the much part of this the business's recovery of 12 municipalities. And Futaba, that the county, the right bottom, as you can see, that 8 counties recovered to something like 25%, mere 25%. Right top, this is a ratio of the job application. The coronavirus reduced the number, but even so, the so-so region is suffering from the shortage of the human resources, so that employment is difficult. So that was the phase 1. And let's move on to phase 2. From the point to the business to area, from point to area, from the one dimension, first dimension to the second dimension. Restarting the farming especially is our key. We did an interview of the farmers. We visited the farmers starting from the 2017 and visited 2,000 farm households. And asked their intention to return or not return. Blue area, already they have returned and restarted the farming, 29%. And interested in restarting after returning, 14%. So 43% altogether. But please look at the pink. Not interested in restarting exactly the same. 43% have no interest of returning and restarting the farming. So on the right hand, many farmers who are not interested in restarting are interested in leasing their own land. And we can match them with the farmers that in need of land, that is. And in addition, so there are 2 examples that I can introduce to you. On the left-hand side, it is an example of smart agriculture and using the high tech, and they scaled up and the farms and the labor saving methods was adopted. This is at the farm of the Minamisoma. And they are utilizing a drone and the other cutting-edge technology. And a freshly graduate from the agricultural high school joined this farm, and she's doing very well. On the right-hand side, delivery plan, so that the gift from the Fukushima is a title given to the Odaka Marché, or the farmers' cooperatives. They themselves put that the vegetables and fruit in a corrugated box and ship out directly to the restaurant or homes in Tokyo. well, they started the website despite the coronavirus pandemic, and that grandpa and grandma are operating the website and sending the fresh fruit and vegetables to that metropolitan area. But the challenges include that the low price on the left-hand side compared with the average price of the nation, it is still low when it's shipped from that of Fukushima, and four countries are still banned the import of the Fukushima products. Well, this is the support for the community building that we create the team of the professionals, and well, we provided the hands-on support. They stationed in the town offices. This is Ebifuru shopping mall that we created. This supported the creation of this, and in April, more than 1 million people cumulatively came at the bottom right. And this is a corner of the locally produced and locally consumed section of the supermarket. This is a dedicated space of the returned farmers. The last phase 3, after 10 years, a decade, and some people are returned and the businesses returned. It all depends on the localities, but it is the number of the flow of the returning is coming down, slowing, so that we have to welcome those people that who are from outside of the community. That has been encouraged recently. This is attracting the companies. With the help of the national government and the prefectural government, that we take advantage of their tax credit and the other subsidies, that we successfully invited 88 businesses from outside of the area, and also that we can match up the local businesses and invited external businesses. And these are the examples that we conducted seminars or creating the ties. Innovation Coast Initiative is our partner. And this is a Fukushima Innovation Coast framework for starting the innovation mechanism for starting the innovation, decommissioning, energy, robotics, and agriculture, and medical, and aerospace. These are the area we are promoting. First, decommissioning. TEPCO and the local business owners are interested in the decommissioning, and we are the pipe between these two. This is a busy slice, but we created the common window, and we will hold the inspection tours, or that creating the pamphlets, and establish an administrative office for decommissioning the work. And this is a robot test field in Minami Soma, and the large area of the roughly 50 hectares accommodates 223 concepts or the tests conducted, and 21 venture businesses also joined us. And these are the five new R&D cases of the robots in Seoul region. Some are very large companies, some are venture businesses, and turning our eyes to the world, that the World Robot Summit is going to be held. It was originally scheduled this year, but it was postponed to next year, although the name is still that the World Robotics Summit 2020. The overall title is Robotics for Happiness, that the world attention is attracted to here. And the local companies exhibit their robots. Now, another issue is tourism. Compared with the national average, Fukushima's the growth of the tourism is not growing; it's leveling off. On the right-hand side, in the Hamadori, the recovery of the tourism is slow. Within that, the Fukushima, and they are hit by the coronavirus pandemic right now, so that we have to boost their business further. And we are paying attention to the school trips to share the experience of the disaster with the high school students. Well, these are the high school students from the Kyushu are invited to Seoul as a part of the school trips, and exchange the views and listen to the lecture of the local people, which was just implemented. Lastly, what's into the future? How about the future? We have to do, for one, that we have to continue the support initiatives. That's for one. But for doing so, especially that the areas where the evacuation orders are lifted that recently, Nakayon Township, for example, that we have to concentrate our resources here. Because we would like to alleviate that the darkness vis-a-vis that, the bright side, and also consolidating the farmland. And we step up the effort and also attract the talent and the capital from the outside. We would like to promote this, and I would like to form the collaboration between that the industries inside and outside of the area. This is the last slide. That what we think of the so regional revitalization is that the state in which the business owners sustainably running their business without the outside help, and the state in which the communities have been revitalized to be sustained and self-sufficient. Or we welcome the people from the outside, and so that we have to maintain the sustainable society. The so region is in advance of the 20-30 years of the issues of the other areas, the remote areas. And if we can revitalize us so we can serve as a model of the other areas, so that the symbol, we would like to create a so region as a symbol of hope. Thank you.
さまざまな事業の再開へ向けての支援活動のご紹介ありがとうございました。それでは、私の方からは、もう一点、一般講演の中で本セッションに関連するポスターが一件、ICRP のウェブサイトにあります。チェルノブイリエクスクルージョンゾーン、制限区域の現状と挑戦という題で、ウクライナのオレーナ・パレヌクさんからのポスター、一般講演がウェブサイトにありますので、後でご覧になっていただきたいと思います。それでは、本セッション、招待講演のテリー・シュナイダーさん、新井康人さん、どうもありがとうございました。次はパネルに移りますので、内藤先生にバトンタッチいたします。内藤さんよろしくお願いします。
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
それでは次に本野さん。
Now we would like to move into the panel discussion. As for the panelists, I have a number of topics presented to them. And we only have a limited time, but we'd appreciate it if you could answer those topics. As for the order of panelists, first Mr. Endo, then Mr. Kono, and then Mr. Ishii, Mr. Igarashi, and Mr. Manpuku, in that order. First of all, the first topic or question is about what have you been working towards for the revitalization of the Fukushima. I'd like to ask you to answer that topic. First, Mr. Endo from Kawauchi. Hello, can you hear me? I am the mayor of Kawauchi. I'd like to thank you, the co-chairs, and also the presenter, Schneider, Dr. Schneider and Mr. Ni. It was a very wonderful presentation. I was encouraged by those presentations. In Kawauchi village, it is about 20 kilometers to 30 kilometers from the nuclear power station. And so all of the area is within the 30-kilometer radius. We do have a very rich natural environment. And on the day of the accident, all of the villages evacuated. And now it is 9 years and 8 months since the accident. And through the support of many people, we have been able to return about the 80% of all villages. So very gradually we are returning to normal life. And we have a 20,000 hectares of land in our village, and 2/3 of that is within the 20-kilometer radius. And all of the areas have been lifted. The evacuation order was lifted for all of the areas. So that was only 4 years ago. And we have been working on decontamination and other environmental restoration efforts, and also preparing the infrastructure. For example, medical care, long-term care, nursing care, also securing employment by inviting industrial complexes. And we now have 3 firms within that industrial complex and carrying out construction work. And outside of that, we also have 3 other companies that have moved in to our village. And in addition, we have a commercial facility set up. We have residential areas. And this is still ongoing. We are now working on establishing a school. And so under these circumstances, about 80% of our villages have now returned. However, 20% have not been able to return. And about 60% of those people are young people who are raising children. So as for the challenge, we did have a rapid decline in the population. And also the younger generations have not been able to return. So aging population is one of the issues. And now we are seeing some of the soft landing of our renovation effort. And personally, over the last 9 years and 8 months, there have been much conflict and dilemma. We have been struggling. I have been struggling with those issues, and I felt pressured constantly. But that was actually quite an exciting, a positive time for me, however. So to protect our hometown, this is some valuable work that we are engaging in. And I've been able to work in that role. And as we move on to the next 10 years, I would like to see the renovation happen and to be able to develop our village. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Konno. I am from Fukushima Innovation Coast. I am from the Secretariat. My name is Konno. At the first presentation, Mr. Nee spoke about our efforts, and also Dr. Schneider's presentation, he spoke about forward-looking work and how we should support those work that comes from within the region. And this is exactly what we are working on. First of all, about the Fukushima Innovation Coast, let me first explain what we are doing in this project. This project was set up after the accident, especially in the Hamadori region, in order to create a new industrial infrastructure. We began in 2014 in January, and in May 2017 we became a national project. Together with the decommissioning, robotics, we have 4 other additional fields, and we are trying to bring industrial clusters and also to promote education and to increase the number of people who are associated with our prefecture. And in my organization, we have set up 3 years ago in 2017. We were an organization was established, and we are a public-private sector, combined sector organization with more than 100 employees. And of course, the Fukushima prefectural governments, we are located there. And what are we doing exactly? We have 4 major work we are doing. First of all is the industrial cluster. So in Hamadori region, we try to support companies that are locating in our region. And we also try to match the local enterprises with the new industrial complex. And we also try to innovate startups and to promote other projects. The second is education and training of the next generation. We have a working together with the university and other education organizations, as well as the industrial world, to support educational programs. The third one is the increase in the number of people who are associated with our prefecture. For example, including smart agriculture, robotics, decommissioning. This is we try invite people, so people from outside of a prefecture may take interest in our work and to perhaps work towards a renovation in the prefecture. And we organize model tours. And lastly, we try to engage in management of our center. As already mentioned, we are engaged in robotics and also the Disaster Memorial Museum. And this year, it must be mentioned that in March we had a robotic field established, and in the east, after the earthquake, we have in September we saw the opening of the memorial museum. As for the robotics, we have a center for a demonstration project in Namies. Using an area of 50 hectares, we have a test tunnels. We also have an airspace for the testing of robots. And within the facility, we have about 20 startup companies. And surrounding the area is another 50 or 60 companies. And working on advanced technologies such as drones and robotics. On the other hand, we have the Disaster Memorial Museum. This is to convey and transmit to the next generation the memories of the disaster. And this is located now in Futabamachi. And which we opened in September, and in 2 months we had more than 20,000 people visit the Disaster Memorial Museum. And this museum not only have exhibitions, but also we have docents. They organize field work and conduct training seminars. And in order to be able to communicate what we learned, the lessons we have learned from the disaster. That's all from me. Thank you. Mr. Kondo, thank you very much. Next, from the university, first of all, Mr. Ishii, please. I am Ishii from Fukushima University. Thank you very much for this opportunity. After the accident, I was assigned at the Fukushima University, and I was involved in agriculture. The first one is testing of rice cultivation. And this involves not only testing, but also the use of reservoirs, the monitoring of radiation, and also the contamination levels in the agricultural produce. We also look at the agricultural farms, not only for the production, but also to understand the extent of the damage. So we look at the monitoring of the soil, the radiation, as well as the aerial dose levels. And in addition, we have been looking at food, drinking water, and so on. That would help to residents to rebuild their lives. And as already mentioned by Mr. Naito, the industrial clustering we are involved in. And all of these requires expertise. And as for me personally, I try to work on the improving environment from the multiple dimensions. And in order to provide also a systematic arrangement for the radiation protection. And this resilience is very important. We will try to work in uniform with the other parties and to rationalize our measures and to evaluate the risks. And another point is that we have been looking at the participation of the farmers, including the agricultural cooperatives. So we have been working with multiple stakeholders in order to rebuild the residents' lives. And we have been looking at what we can do. We have been trying to identify what we can do for the future. So just let me give you just one example. For 2011, we had a high radiation dose, and the first rice was discovered in Fukushima, and the rice was taken into our university, and gradually the radiation dose was low enough to be permitted by the government, and we have been monitoring the radiation dose. And by bringing different people together, we can increase the reliability of the data we measure. So this I think we have been meaningful. And in that sense, not only should the experts be involved, but also we were as experts, we will not be able to disclose the appropriate guidance, but we have been working together with the government, organizations, the residents, and other stakeholders to arrive at this kind of guidance. And after 2016, we went to Iitate, Katsumura, Okuma, in the areas that there have been an evacuation order. So we were looking at some of the crops in those areas, and the farming people number were significantly decreased. So we tried to implement actions to address this. And from 2019, I have a new laboratory research lab within the university. Not only to look at the negative aspects of the radiation, but also to look at the food science in order to promote agriculture for the future and to train people. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Professor Igarashi, please. I do have some slides. Can I show them? Yes, please. I am Igarashi from Tsukuba University. My expertise is sociology. And I will be speaking not as a expert, but rather I started to be involved as a private citizen. So I'm living in Kashiwa in Ibaraki City. This is a northeastern side, and in the Kanto region, this was considered the hotspot. So this is in the suburbs of Tokyo. This is, of course, the environment is different from Fukushima, but I've been involved in a community development, and in that role, I have been looking at the local production and local consumption of vegetables. And at first, I didn't know many things, so I wasn't sure how I was supposed to monitor the radiation levels. And that's where I started. And this was from the Kashiwa Roundtable meeting. And I worked with the producers and the local some activists who are concerned about the radiation, and also the distributors and so forth. So we invited various stakeholders and discussed how we were going to monitor and how we're going to transmit information. And I was the secretariat for this roundtable. And so we had involvement of multiple stakeholders trying to transmit information and to bring back trust in the agricultural produce. And this was made into a book after 1.5 years. And what we actually did was to go into the actual farm and to monitor the soil, the radiation levels. And we tried to identify which spots had high radiation doses. And we identified those areas, and we took samples. And we measured the cesium. and they would then be able to understand the risks. And for this particular farm, we knew that the carrot in particular was safe enough to ship, and so we made this information public. And the standards was the 20 becquerel per kilogram, which is quite a severe level. But most of some of the farm produce were less than this level, and we tried to transmit information regarding this. And after that, from 2014, I started to be involved in the Fukushima area, and after in Kashiwa, we had some people who were interested from Fukushima in our work. So we went into Iwaki in 2014 and worked with the fisheries industry. And for us, we did a cross-check as we are doing in a Kashiwa. And of course, people couldn't trust the government, but they were more they could trust the fellow citizens. So therefore, we created a citizen-based monitoring, and not only for the agriculture produce, but also for the fishing industry. So we went into Iwaki, to the harbor. We went out to the sea, and from 1.5 kilometers from the nuclear power plant, we took samples from the sediments under the sea and the fish. And with the cooperation with the aquarium, we also conducted study tours, inviting residents to go out to the sea. So this was called the Umi Labo project or Shirabe Labo project. And so we have been engaged in this after 2014. And through this experience in 2018, 2 years ago, we published a book about the nuclear power accident and food. And this book compiles some of the experiences regarding the nuclear accident and its relation with food. And of course, we have already understood quite a bit about the natural science aspects, but in terms of the society, how it relates to society, there was not much enough sufficient science there. So that is the reason I published this book. And the consumers are becoming diversified. And we were engaged in how to think about communication with the various kinds of consumers. And this was another aim of my book. So by using a layperson's language, we try to communicate some of the natural science expertise. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
次にですね、招待講演者だとか、他のパネリストの話を聞いて、
Lastly, Mr.
何か感
Manpuku,
想だとかコ
please.
メントをあるいは追加したいご
Thank you.
説明があれ
Can
ば
you
お
hear
願
me?
いしたい
I
と
am
思いますが、
Manpuku
いかが
from
でしょうか。
NARO. Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Schneider and Mr. Nee. And today, as a panelist, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Naito. In NARA, we are working for the technology development for decontamination and also maintenance of farmland and also the accumulation of data from the fallout. And we have been providing information of those data. From the personal standpoint of view, I have been working on the demonstration tests for some of the technology, and we have been providing guidance. And in Itat village, we were conducting the demonstration, and we have worked with the mayor, Mr. Kano, and we have heard about their requests, and we have been dispatched to the Itate village and be working as a member of the Itate city office. And so that's been for more than 9.5 years. I've been working together with the Itate villager. As a scientist, as well as a part of the municipal government, so this has been quite a unique role. And there are many issues that the municipalities will have to deal with. And this was my impression actually coming into work for the municipality and be working, having meetings for decontamination, meeting briefings with the residents. And as mentioned by Dr. Schneider, at the briefing session, there were questions about how we're going to carry on agriculture and how was the compensation is going to be provided. And in 2012 to 2014, I participated in those briefings more than 200 times. And in my experience, there were some people shouting and so forth. And as a municipal government, we have to listen to their complaints, trying to respond to their concerns. And because I am not an expert on radiology, and I try to study the science and try to think about how we communicate during the day or night, visiting the residents, and working together with those residents. And I have seen the public and government sector, the private sector visiting residents, and I've been also involved in those efforts, trying to communicate with the residents, which was no easy task. And in large briefing sessions, it is quite difficult to address their concerns. And although this is a difficult issue, it is much better we have a smaller group, and we have a word called made itate, to be meticulous, to provide a careful discussion was much better. On itate, we were talking about the acceptance of the waste, and we also have been renovate the soil, and we have conducted some of the demonstration tests. And all of these will be, all of the waste may not be able to move out of the area in 30 years, but as a scientist, as a government, we need to take responsibility for these issues. And I've been involved in, I'm appreciating the opportunity that I had to be able to be at the forefront of these advanced efforts. And I've been involved in with the residents, and their requests are always changing. And they were at first we're talking about decontamination and compensation, but now they are talking about how to sustain their livelihood. So we do feel that we are now in the next phase of the restoration. So that this must be our efforts. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Manpuku. So we did have a very interesting story about your respective activities, and the time is limited, but I would now like to pose the next question. And as I was listening to the presentation of panelists, if you have any comments for those presentations or the comments from panelists, would you like to say something about that? I'm Kono from the Innovation Coast Program. So I do have several points I would like to mention. First of all, Mr. Endo has said that 80% of the villages has returned and the life is gradually returning to normal. And I think that is the result of the efforts by the village. And as for the challenges, I would like to mention about the sudden decrease in the population, especially the decrease in the younger generation. I see this as a challenge, and that was also mentioned by Mr. Endo. And the other thing, Professor Igarashi has talked about the importance of securing transparency and trust. And in order, when lifting evacuation order, the results of the monitoring radiation doses is examined by a third party. And the results are then submitted to the public. But because of the government, the lack of trust in the government, the experts had the role of explaining by securing transparency of the data and the situation. So that was, and Mr. Mampuku lastly said that it's better to have a smaller meeting for communication. And I do also have organize and attend briefing sessions and try to answer to some of the concerns the residents have. And in addition to the large-scale briefing sessions, we do visit the local communities and to explain to a small group. And in those, that kind of provides the opportunity for the residents to sort of pose questions that they were not able to do in the large briefing sessions. Thank you very much. Other panelists have comments. This is from the Mr. Endo, please. Yes, from Kawaguchi. Dr. Schneider, in the presentation, he said that there were three pillars for gaining trust. One is dialogue, the second one is measurement, and the other one is the local project. And I agree fully with that view. As for restoration, this is about how we build trust with the residents, and that is at the core of our renovation. And it might take time, but it is important we promote dialogue with the residents. And this is particularly important. And to make something visible that is invisible, and in order to try to free them from those fears, dialogue is important. The second one, the measurement. This is about making something invisible visible, and that then leads to a controlling situation, especially the measurement of food. There are concerns there, and people have different views about the radiations. But if we can have a data and make it visible, that leads to allow us to control the situation. And the third one about the local project. And this is the area where we try to share information with the residents. And this is where restoring the environment for the livelihood, and we need to convince and have a proper understanding, common understanding with the residents. Thank you very much, Dr. Schneider, for your presentation. Thank you very much. There has been a talk of a rapid decrease in the population, and also they have mentioned the importance of dialogue. Next, I would like to invite Professor Ishii or Mr. Mampuku about the challenges that you have been able to identify through your activities, and as for the future, what is needed for the future? Professor Ishii, please. Thank you very much. So I haven't really been able to sort through things in my mind, but I think there are many challenges. In terms of education, of course, training, development of the next generation and the young people, and I have been involved in. And this is not only about communicating our knowledge to the next generation, but also how when we faced with the emergency situation, and how we provide a solution for that. And this is something that we need to work together, not only among the university professors, but also by other stakeholders. So education is not something limited to the university. There can be involvement from agriculture, farmers, to make a better agricultural produce. So in this kind of how we respond to high radiation situations. So these kind of research, and when we try to explore the issues, we need to instill in the students this kind of the mindset for exploring in depth about these situations. And this is something I learned from my experience in Fukushima. And of course, translating that into education is not always easy, but we need to instill this kind of mindset within the younger generation of students. Thank you very much. Next, Professor Igarashi, please. Yes, I've been working in the field, mostly in the agriculture and fisheries, and trying to respond to the issues of the false rumors and the marketing as a researcher. And in that experience, now it is 5 or 6 years after the accident, and people have been already, now it is past the phase where we are recovering from the radiation, but the issues have now come very clear. For example, for the rice, in 2016, the price was quite low, has dropped. But before that, of course, in Hamadori, the price was not really that high originally, even though they had a very good agricultural rice. And of course, with much energy has to be poured into the recovery. And after that, they have been able to develop new types of brands, rice brands, and that have been marketed. And the market itself has also changed. And of course, the energy has been poured into the radiation, and as a result, there have been delay in terms of marketing of the rice. And so there are common issues that cuts across the whole regions affected. But not only that, there is an issue related to marketing, issues related to development that needs to be considered. And unless we are able to solve these issues, we are at a deadlock. So I think going forward, we need to think some of these issues. Thank you very much.